Hey everyone, and welcome. Ever think about the United States as, well, kind of like a giant computer? Today we're going to look at its operating system. We're talking about the blueprint for American government and, most importantly, what it means to be a citizen. You know, the person who actually gets to use the keyboard. All right, let's jump right in. So, here's how we're going to tackle this. First up, we'll start small with the individual. How does someone even become a citizen? Then we'll zoom out a bit and look at what's expected of you once you are one. After that, we'll get into the really big ideas, the principles that make the whole thing tick. And finally, we're going to go full-on history detective and trace this blueprint all the way back to its roots.
Okay, first things first, let's get down to the absolute basics. What does it actually mean to be a U.S. citizen?
So think of it this way. A citizen is basically a legally recognized member of the club, and that membership comes with a whole package of rights, obligations, and responsibilities. Now, the 14th Amendment, a really key part of the Constitution, spells out two main ways you get into this club. You can be born a citizen, either by being born here or to American parents, or you can go through a specific process called naturalization. And let me tell you, that path to naturalization, it's a real journey. It's not just a quick sign up. You've got to live here for a while, they do a character assessment, and you have to pass tests on U.S. history and English. But what's so incredible is that this very process has been this amazing engine for diversity in America, bringing in people from every corner of the globe who make the country what it is. Okay, so let's say you're a citizen. Now what? What are you actually supposed to do? This is where things get really interesting because it's not just one big list. It's actually split into two very different categories. The stuff you absolutely have to do and the stuff you really, really should do. And it is so important to get the difference between these two. The things on the left, those are your obligations. They're legally required. If you don't do them, you can get in actual trouble. But the list on the right, those are your responsibilities. They're voluntary, but honestly, they are the absolute lifeblood of a healthy democracy. I mean, look at jury duty. Yeah, it's an obligation, but it's also way more than that. It's the system that makes sure we all have the right to a trial by a jury of our peers. And this really gets to a critical point. Look, you're not going to get a fine for not voting. Nobody's going to arrest you for not volunteering. But, and this is a big but, if enough people decide not to do those things, the whole system starts to get shaky. Our rights and our freedoms, they're not set in stone. They literally depend on us, on citizens, actually showing up and participating. So that makes you wonder, right? Why these specific things? Why is voting such a big deal? Why do we have to serve on juries? Well, it's not random. The answers are all rooted in a handful of core principles, these big ideas that are the bedrock of the entire American government. Remember that operating system idea? Well, think of these principles as the source code. This is what was running in the minds of the founders. It connects everything. For example, that idea of the rule of law, that's why we have to obey laws and serve on juries. The idea that the government gets its power from the people, that's why we should vote. These principles literally define the relationship between us and the government. Let's zoom in on one of these because it's a huge one, the rule of law. It sounds simple, but it is a truly radical idea. It just means that the law applies to everyone. Period. It doesn't matter if you're a regular person or the President of the United States. No one is above the law. This is our fundamental protection against a government just doing whatever it wants. It's what keeps our leaders in check. But where did these incredible ideas even come from? They didn't just pop into existence in 1776, right? Nope. The founding fathers were huge history buffs. They were, standing on the shoulders of giants, pulling from centuries of political thinking. So let's do some digging. Let's trace this blueprint back and see whose ideas they were borrowing. Okay, first up, let's meet John Locke. This guy was a major thinker during the Enlightenment, and he came up with an idea that completely changed the game. He said that all people have natural rights. And the key part? These rights don't come from a king. They don't come from any government. They just exist as part of being human. Life, liberty, property, he said these are fundamental. Does that life, liberty, and property thing ring a bell? It should. You can draw a straight line from John Locke right to Thomas Jefferson. Jefferson took that idea and tweaked it just a little for the Declaration of Independence to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This is the social contract in action, the idea that a government's only legitimate if the people, the governed, agree to it. All right, another major architect of these ideas was Baron de Montesquieu. He had this brilliant plan for how to structure a government to keep it from getting too powerful. His idea? Don't put all the power in one place, split it up. He proposed three branches, one to make the laws, one to enforce them, and one to interpret them. This separation of powers became the absolute bedrock of the US Constitution, creating our system of checks and balances.
And these weren't just theories in some dusty old books. These ideas were tested and fought for and written down over centuries. You can literally follow the paper trail to freedom. It starts way back in 1215 with the Magna Carta, the first time anyone really told a king, hey, you have to follow the rules too. Then you have the Mayflower Compact, where a small group of people basically said, we're going to govern ourselves. Fast forward to the English Bill of Rights, which laid out specific individual freedoms. And all of that set the perfect stage for Thomas Paine's pamphlet, Common Sense, which was like the final match that lit the fuse of the American Revolution. But wait, we can go back even further. Seriously, the DNA for American government goes all the way back to the ancient world. Think about it. The ancient Greeks and their idea of the polis, the city-state, that's the ancestor of our self-governing cities and counties. The Roman Republic, that gave us the whole concept of a representative government, where we, the people, elect others to speak for us. And you can even see the influence of Judeo-Christian ethics in our laws, with their focus on justice and the idea that every individual has value. So you see how it all connects? From the simple definition of a citizen to the two lists of things we must and should do, all the way back to these powerful ideas from thinkers and ancient civilizations, it all weaves together into this incredible blueprint for self-government. But the most important thing to remember is this isn't just a history lesson. It's a living, breathing thing. And it only works if people participate, which of course brings it all back to you. Now that you've seen the blueprint, the real question is, which piece of it are you going to own? Which responsibility will you fulfill today?